Alhamdulillah. I ask Allah to make this easy for me and for you. Correct your intentions. Barakallahu feekum. Glad to gather with you again. Alhamdulillah. And I ask Allah to grant us the great benefits. Ameen. So we're continuing in this light summary. Yani, progressing through the knowledge. What did we do? We started with overview of the immediate knowledge, in which we covered some of these things. Then we went over Ibn Asakir to talk more about the creed, but not far in detail. A little bit more in detail, not far in detail. Then we went over Qawa'id Muhimma, those 8 rules of blasphemy, just for more strength in this creed. And then we came here to the light summary to add more strength to the obligatory knowledge we took and put on top of that more than the obligatory knowledge. Then, inshallah, we'll see what we do after that, if Allah enables us and wills for us. Because what page are we on here anyway? In the light summary. Page 11 of 33. So, third of the way through. The author says, section. The minimum menstruation is a day and a night. What's menstruation? He didn't define it here. That means he's approaching you as if you know what it is. So that enables him to keep his words brief. He didn't say menstruation is, and its minimum is. What is it? It is a naturally occurring vaginal bleeding. Its source is the extent of the womb. The extent of the womb means the part of the womb closer to the chest. Yani, away from the vagina, closer to the chest. That's the source of this blood. It is a naturally occurring bleeding, vaginal bleeding, originating from the extent of the womb. Maybe we might say the top of the womb. It is not due to giving birth, and it's not due to giving birth. That's the definition. A naturally occurring vaginal bleeding originating from the top of the womb that is not due to childbirth. When I define it for you that way, then I'm really telling you there's 3 kinds of vaginal bleeding. This definition that I just gave you for menses uncovers for you that there are 3 kinds of menstrual bleeding. Maybe you caught the second kind, but you might not have caught the third kind in the definition. I'll repeat the definition for you. I think you'll catch what the second kind of vaginal bleeding is from the definition. But what's the third kind from the definition? Here's the definition again. Menstruation is a naturally occurring vaginal bleeding whose source is originating from the top of the womb that is not due to childbirth. So you might say, okay, childbirth, that's another kind of vaginal bleeding, the one that's due to childbirth. So we have menses, we have the blood for childbirth. Let me see what you have here. Yeah, I'll say it one more time and slowly. Bismillah. Menstruation is a naturally occurring vaginal bleeding originating from the top of the womb or the extent of the womb that is not due to childbirth. Naturally occurring vaginal bleeding originating from the top of the or extent of the womb not due to childbirth. So this definition uncovers for you three kinds of vaginal bleeding. You might say, where's the third one? You're welcome. Menses, okay, that's our topic. Vaginal bleeding due to childbirth, okay. Where's the third one in there? Where's the third one? 5. Sickness bleeding. That's correct. Where's the mentioning of sickness bleeding in the definition I gave you, though? That's the real meaning of the question. Correct. Naturally occurring. So when we say the menses is naturally occurring bleeding, yani, or we could say another way, is a healthy bleeding. It's a healthy bleeding. Menstruation is a healthy bleeding. So when we say that, then we are excluding unhealthy bleeding. I said natural. So then if we're going to commit to that word, would be unnatural bleeding. The meaning would be unhealthy, though. Unusual. Sickness bleeding. That is not due to childbirth, which that's postpartum bleeding. So there's 3 vaginal bleedings. Most of it is menstruation. The other 2 are sickness bleeding and postpartum bleeding. So he says the minimum menstruation is a day and a night. Very, very important here. This is what they say most of the time. And it's correct. But what you might not understand from this is that it doesn't have to be consecutive 24 hours. Yani, here. Its minimum is a day and a night, and its maximum is 15 days. So what that means is, when you put those two together right there, this means at least 24 hours of bleeding inside of 15 days. At least 24 hours of bleeding inside of a span of 15 days. This is menses, according to the Shafi'i school. There is not a consensus on many of these rules of menses, because most of the rules of menses are derived. They are on the part of the mujtahid, not from explicit hadiths and ayat about the details. Rather, there's general ayah in the Quran mentioning that menses is excrement. Menstrual blood is excrement. And to avoid the women when they are menstruating. Okay, so that doesn't tell us a lot about the rules, though, of menses, like what we're going to talk about now. A little bit of rules. Now, we're going to talk about. And also, there are hadiths when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would have said, this is menses, that's not menses. Yani, not detailed words. If we go over menses with more details, then inshallah we can see the reference for those more exactly. But we want to stick now to the theme of the book, the light summary, and keep it all light, or as light as we can. The minimum menstruation is a day and a night, and its maximum is 15 days. That means 24 hours of bleeding within a span of 15 days. This necessarily means that it's possible for that bleeding to start and stop. So if the bleeding is starting and stopping, what does she do? She does like this. When it starts, as long as that's a time that can be menses, so we're assuming that her bleeding started at a time that's valid to be menses. What's not a time that's valid to be menses? Like, what if a girl who's 6 or 7 saw vaginal bleeding. This is not a time that's valid to be menses. Or some other cases. I only gave you this example here because it's so easy. I don't want to give a lot of heavy cases where it requires lots of thought and words. But it's important for me to say this right here. If the bleeding were in a time that's valid to be menses, that sentence, that qualifier is very important. Okay? I could just say, if a woman saw the bleeding, that's fine. It just means we're talking generally here, easily. Want to make sure all the religious rules line up for you very well. I'm going to say it like this. If she saw blood in a time that's valid to be menses. So let's go back to the easy way now. She saw blood. So what does she do? When it starts, she assumes that it's menses. She assumes that it's menses. Why would she assume? Because the minimum of menses is a day and a night. So when she first sees the blood, that's not a whole day and a night. That's the first moment. Yani, when did she start counting? From the time she saw it. That's the rule. So, yani, she doesn't say, I think it started an hour ago or it started 2 hours ago. No. The rule is she starts counting from the time she saw it. So when she sees it, that's the first moment right there. That's not a whole day and night. So therefore, she's going to assume that this is menses because the whole day and night hasn't passed yet. This means she doesn't wait for a day and a night and then say it's menses. She starts treating it as menses. And it might turn out not to be. That's what we're going to see now. So she treats it as menses when she sees it. When she sees it is when she starts counting. Okay. So let's say, first of all, we have to say that's day one. First day and hour one. Day one, hour one. That's the start of hour one. Now, the days and the hours are not running concurrently. This is what maybe is confuse some people. The days and the hours are not running concurrently necessarily, meaning the hours, how are you going to get 24 hours inside of 15 days? By stop counting and start counting again and stop counting and start counting again. So what do you stop counting? Only the hours, not the days. Once the blood starts, okay, that's day one. You got 15 days now. Don't stop counting the days. But the hours, you would stop counting until you verify 24. So day one, hour one. Really, first moment of hour one. She just saw it right now. Let's say that's 12 o'clock p.m. Then at 6 o'clock p.m., she saw that there wasn't any blood there. That's 6 hours on day one. Stop counting now the hours. Day two comes in. But before day two comes in, what does she do right here after 6 hours? She says, that's not 24 hours. And it stopped. Will it come back? No. Could be that it usually does come back. But the religious rule is not to assume that it will come back. Even if it faithfully comes back every single month, every single month, every single month, year after year, never fails. You still don't assume that it's going to come back. That's the rule. When the bleeding stops, stop counting the hours for the first 24 hours. You only need to count 24 hours anyway. You don't have to count more than 24 hours. Once you verify your 24 hours, stop counting hours. Once you verify 24 hours, then that's going to tell you that all of the days were menses. The whole time was menses. Even when the bleeding paused, was still menses. But you don't assume it's going to come back. So at 6 o'clock, she looked and there wasn't any bleeding. So what does she do? Number one, here's a question for you. Does she have to perform a ghusl in this scenario? 5, 4, 3.
Repeat the question, please.
Yes. The question is, in this scenario, this picture we just painted right now, which is that she saw the bleeding at 12 p.m., then the bleeding, she saw that it stopped at 6 p.m., and she does not assume that it's going to come back, even if it always does. But she's not supposed to. That's the rule. So the question is, so now that the blood stopped, is she obligated to perform a ghusl? 4. Someone said no. That's the correct answer. Someone said yes and pray. Wrong answer. Correct answer. No, she is not obligated to perform a ghusl. Why not? Because she didn't verify menstruation yet. Because according to the Shafi'i school, the menses is verified by 24 hours of bleeding. And these 24 hours, it's possible for them to be distributed over a span of 15 days. But before verifying 24 hours of bleeding, she does not verify that this vaginal bleeding was menses. Correct. So she just needs to perform istinja and wudu. And she prays. But what she might do, if she expects for the bleeding, to return, what she might do is just wait until before the time goes out. If it becomes too tight, eh, if the time is too close for comfort, then she just makes her istinja and her wudu and she prays. And that's how she goes every time it starts and stops. Every time it starts and stops. Every time it starts and stops. Meaning she doesn't let the prayer time go out. Not meaning every time it stops, she needs to make istinja and pray immediately. Rather, whenever it stops, below 24 hours, yani, anytime it stops, then, yeah, below 24 hours, then she can wait till before the time goes out if she wants to, but she needs to pray. And anything else that a non-menstruating or anything else that does not pertain to a non-menstruating woman, she needs to observe those. We're going to see rules for the menstruating woman. Or I think I didn't say that right. Anything else that pertains to a non-menstruating woman, she has to observe those. And then if the blood comes back, so let's say day 2, came back at 12 p.m., lasted until 6 p.m. Now that's 12 hours over 2 days. When the blood stops, you stop counting hours. Don't stop counting days, though. And like that, whenever the blood comes back, you start counting again. Whenever it stops, you stop counting until you verify 24 hours of bleeding. How do you verify the time of starting and stopping? I already said to you, now I'll repeat for you. By seeing. That's it. That easy. What if she didn't look for a long time? That's fine. There is no specific time in which she's obligated to look. So it's so easy. Like, what if a woman saw in the morning that she was menstruating? Or not in the morning. She saw in the night that she was menstruating. Then she didn't look again until Maghrib, meaning the whole daytime came in and then Maghrib came in and then she looked and there was no blood there. Is she excused here from her fasting? Yes. Now, you might say to me, what? She didn't go to the bathroom all day? So I'm going to say, yeah, she never went to the bathroom all day because that's not really the point here. Point here is to understand how the rule works. She starts counting and stops counting by looking. That's it. Without having any particular time of being obligated to look. So sometimes she's going to look inadvertently. That's not a condition that she intends to look. So when she looks and she sees that she's bleeding or not, then she counts or stops counting. And she adds up the time, the hours, until verifying 24 hours of bleeding. Once she verifies 24 hours of bleeding, now she stops counting hours. Now she's only going to continue counting days. So what was the point of counting the hours? The point of counting the hours was to verify that it is menstrual blood indeed. Once you verified that it was menstrual blood, then all of the time since the first sighting of the blood, including all pauses, all of that was menses. That's the Shafi'i school. Not consensus. Now, once she finished counting hours, she's only counting days. As long as this bleeding stops within 15 days, then it's menses. All of it. Then all of it is menses. As long as this bleeding stops within 15 days, then all of it is menses. If this bleeding goes beyond 15 days, then not all of it is menses. Some of it is sickness bleeding. If I stick just to the text here, then I'm not going to talk about sickness bleeding. And I think what I just said to you is fine enough for the level we're on. Any question here? Yani, when we say, if it goes beyond 15 days, then some of it is sickness bleeding, not all of it is menses. So then that begs the question, how do you determine how much of it was sickness bleeding? So if I just want to stick to the text, then I'll stop there. Minimum menstruation is a day and a night, and its maximum is 15 days. I'm going to stick to the text here. Unless you have a question, or you tell me something wasn't clear. He said, and its norm is 6 or 7 days of every month, that is. Not just 6 or 7 days only, 6 or 7 days of every month, really. You might say, isn't that a given of every month? Well, since we said it's a norm, the general norm, then yeah, it's obvious. That's why he didn't have to say of every month. But when you consider that every woman has her own norm, her personal norm, then her personal norm could be 6 or 7 days of menses, but every 6 months. Here, he's not talking about any personal norm. So he didn't have to say of every month. I think I can briefly go through this list here where the author says forbidden because of menstruation and sexual impurity means you need a ghusl is prayer. So that's clear. Obligatory or voluntary. Circling the Kaaba, obligatory or voluntary. Touching the mushaf and carrying it, even in a bag, according to Ash-Shafi'i. But not if you're carrying your stuff, generally, your luggage, your backpack, not the mushaf is the mushaf that you have in your bag is not the intention, but rather all your stuff, your belongings or your luggage, you want to take it and go, for example, or carry it, then you don't need wudu. If your intention is to carry your mushaf that's in the bag, then you need wudu, according to Ash-Shafi'i. Staying in the masjid, that means going in one door and coming out the same door. That's what staying means here. Going in one door and coming out the same door, even if you don't stand still. What does it say in the Arabic? Wallukthu, lingering. Let's say lingering. Lingering in the masjid, dwelling in the masjid. How would that be? By entering through a door and coming out the same door. That's enough. Even if you don't stand still. What does that exclude? That's a question you always want to ask yourself when someone says something to you. What he is saying to me, what does that include? What does that exclude? That's how the Muslim scholars think. Lingering in the masjid is going in a door and coming out the same door. So what does that exclude? That excludes going in a door and coming out of a different door without being still. Without being still. Just keep going. This is permissible except if the menstruating woman fears that she will stain the masjid, then she cannot enter. Also, lingering is different from entering. In order to linger, you have to enter, but those are two different things. What's the judgment of entering? What's the judgment of lingering? So, the menstruating woman and the person who's sexually impure needs a ghusl, they may enter the masjid, and pass through without stopping and exit out of another door, except the menstruating woman who fears staining the masjid, then she may not enter. And also anyone whose uh, wound is leaking, has a gash, he's leaking blood, and he's going to stain the masjid, he may not enter. Reciting the Quran with the intention of recitation, yes. So when you start thinking the way I told you, then this develops questions for you. Reciting the Quran with the intention of recitation, what does that include? What does that exclude? Well, so what if it was like this? Or what was like that? This is now you're thinking in terms of fiqh. What are the scenarios? What are the implications of what you are saying? Reciting the Quran, reciting, first of all, means pronouncing with your tongue, not just moving your tongue only. Not just moving your tongue. According to what we are saying, if she moved her tongue and lips like the letters of the Quran without making a sound, it's not haram. With the intention of recitation, what does that exclude? That excludes saying dua that's in the Quran without the intention of reciting the Quran, but with the intention of saying the dua as a dua or a dhikr, a dua or a dhikr. Like Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. If she said that while menstruating, not with the intention of reciting the Quran, but with the intention of dhikr, that's permissible. Forbidden for the menstruating woman specifically is fasting, yes. And she does not need a ghusl to start fasting when it's time for her to make her intention to start fasting. A ghusl is not a requirement. Passing through the masjid if she fears staining it with blood, I already told you that. And enjoying what is between the navel and the knees. Yes, and enjoying what is between the navel and the knees, that's broader than sexual intercourse. When you say it this way, that's broader than sexual intercourse. Yani, that's more than. Yani, according to this, sexual intercourse is forbidden and more is forbidden. Enjoying all of what's between the navel and the knees without a barrier. That includes looking. And we'll stop on this last sentence he says here. Sexual intercourse during menstruation is a major sin. Wait, let me finish this. I thought it was more. Okay, that's clear. Sexual intercourse during menstruation is a major sin. Yes, that's clear. He says, obligatory on a menstruating woman is making up the fast of Ramadan, not the prayer. That's easy. She has to make up the fast and not the prayer. Why? Because the prayer comes more frequently. So being obligated to make up the prayer for menses is a greater burden than making up the fasting because of menses. So she's not obligated to make up the prayer because of menses. Like Aisha said, we were commanded to make up the fasting because of menses and not the prayer. If the bleeding stops, she may fast before performing a ghusl. I already said that now for you. Whatever is forbidden by menstruation is forbidden by postpartum bleeding. Yes, because they are basically the same. Postpartum bleeding is concentrated menstrual blood. Postpartum blood is concentrated menstrual blood, meaning that the woman, when she became pregnant, her menses was detained and was collecting. Then when she releases the baby, then the womb will shed this blood. And then he defined it. Postpartum bleeding is the blood that comes out after delivering a baby. Yes. He's saying it in easy words. And more scientific terms, it is the blood that comes out after emptying the womb, after the emptying of the womb. Yani in more absolute terms. Its minimum is 1 moment and its maximum is 60 days. Wallahu a'lam. So I just stuck to the text here. Do you have any question? We finished this menses in one session. I hope it wasn't too much information, or I hope I wasn't talking too fast. Alhamdulillah. طيب. Alhamdulillah. Ameen wa feek. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. And there's a lesson I like to point out here whenever I go over menses, which is the scholars said the science of fiqh gives you experience before experience. What does that mean? Means by learning fiqh, it would be like you have experience with things that you have never encountered. So here I am giving a group of ladies detailed lesson about their own menses, and I never saw that in my life, and I never experienced that in my life. Wallahu a'lam.